What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham Jason Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking the latest WWE 24 documentary on R-Truth that aired, I believe, prior to the WWE Super Showdown pay-per-view on Thursday. They aired it afterward, but it first went up, I think, via on-demand on Thursday morning. It really sucks that it had to air following that pay-per-view, that it had to go up on the same day as that show. Because, well, first of all, my full thoughts on the pay-per-view are available on my podcast, Wrestle Rant Radio, for those who missed it, cheap plug. But overall, the show wasn't terrible, but it had to follow that atrocious finish with Goldberg beating The Fiend to become the new Universal Champion. And I have not seen social media that angry. I have not been that frustrated as a fan with WWE since the whole Hell in a Cell atrocity, 6 months ago when Rollins beat The Fiend, or whatever the hell it was, whatever the hell that was supposed to be many months ago. So it really sucks that this had to go up after that pay-per-view, because no one was talking about the R-Truth documentary. Probably no one watched it, because people were too busy complaining and whining, and rightfully so, about The Fiend losing the Universal Championship on Thursday. So that sucks. It really sucks they couldn't air like a ride-along or something, dumb like that, because I was looking forward to this, and I just checked it out on Friday, and it was well worth the 50 minutes. This was terrific. It made me laugh. It made me cry. It made me feel everything else in between. This was a great piece of business. And again, the 24s never disappoint. They're always fantastic. They've been doing these for the past 5 years now, if you can believe that, since I think the WrestleMania 31 about 5 years ago. And every single one, I have yet to see anyone that is less than great. This was no exception. There really wasn't any reason for it. It's not like, like with Batista, they put his up last year because he just retired at WrestleMania, or Kofi Kingston's, he won the WWE title, or Ronda Rousey, it marked her first year in WWE. R-Truth, no certain special anniversary or anything like that, but it was still some spectacular stuff, and well worth it too. He's one of those guys where I've never been his biggest fan, but I've really come around to enjoying his work in recent years, because he's just so damn funny. Like if you go back and watch a lot of the skits they air on this documentary, you really realize how underrated this guy is and how great he was as like a top talent earlier on in his career. Like, the only way he gets a WWE title run now is if it's like one of those quick runs, like Santino almost would have had many years ago when he faced Daniel Bryan inside the Elimination Chamber and came within seconds of becoming champion. I don't think R-Truth winning the WWE title would be like Kofi Kingston when he held the championship for 6 months. I could take Kofi a bit more seriously in that role than R-Truth. But, there's no reason to not build up R-Truth as a one-night-only WWE champion just to say that he did it. He was United States champion for a cup of coffee, actually last year too, but I was thinking more along the lines of 10 years ago, when I think he beat The Miz for the belt, like it was a vacant championship, and he lost it the very next month. He's had maybe 1 or 2 tag team title reigns. He really has not won many titles, aside from the 24/7 championship, seemingly a million times. So the guy does not get the credit he deserves for being one of the best performers that they have in terms of being able to do anything they ask of him and so much more. So anyway, to kick off the documentary, we see him back in Charlotte, North Carolina, where he grew up. He calls it home. He feels like he's 20 now. He feels like he hasn't aged at all, which is absolutely accurate because the guy never ages whatsoever. He still looks like he's 25 years old. He has not aged at all in the 12 years I have seen him in WWE. And even beyond that, when we saw footage of him in the NWA and TNA, he still looks exactly the same. But again, we see him visiting his old hometown in Charlotte, calls it his hood, and how a lot of kids don't make it out of there. A lot of people kind of get stuck up in the lifestyle, from where he lives specifically, that they kind of get stuck up in the trouble and they never really escape that. And he was no different early on in his life. But before that, they talk about how R-Truth was on the football team in high school. He was, we hear from his coach who praises him and his abilities, saying that he probably would have been a low D1 running back recruit. And he got that football scholarship. And his dad actually thought, we don't hear much from his dad on this documentary. We hear a lot more from his mom, and they seem like really cool people. But his dad thought he would go on to do football as a career. And the only reason why he wanted to go to college was to play football. That was it. He had no other aspirations of going to college. But playing football, though he loved it, that was where he suffered almost all of his injuries. He probably got hurt more doing the football, playing football, than he ever did wrestling, which is kind of crazy. But his coach remembered that he liked to rap when he was on the team and was just overall very entertaining. He had different hairstyles. He got into music. So he didn't go forward with the college thing. He ditched that and did the music instead. And he recorded some rap albums, but his career wasn't really taking off. He had one song that made it onto the radio for like 15 seconds. It wasn't really that big of a deal. So it wasn't paying dividends, quite yet. And the producer asked him, what were you doing to make money? Because this wasn't really making you money. What were you doing to make money? And he flat out said, I was selling drugs. That's what I had to do to make money. And I spent all that money on my music career, the outfits, the dancers, getting my music published, stuff like that. That's what I spent the money on. And his separated parents, they just separated around that point. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what he was doing. I mean, they knew about the music stuff, but they didn't know about the drugs. And he used to practice lying to his mom. He used to practice coming up with lies to tell his mom about how he was making all this money. He showed up at the house one day with a brand new car. What is he supposed to say? That someone gave it to him? Well, that's what he said. He would practice lies like, oh, someone just gave me money. Like, it doesn't exactly work like that, But we see him visit Freedom Park. And I guess that's a pretty popular site in that part of Charlotte. But he thought he would be selling drugs for the rest of his life. And the police were very familiar with R-Truth at that point, at that stage of his life, because he was in and out of jail, not doing any significant time for a while. But, he sold drugs, there was like gun charges, violence charges, stuff like that. And, I think he did do a decent period of time in jail for a little while towards the end after kind of dabbling with it for a little bit. But while he was in jail, it ended up being one of the best things to ever happen to him, actually, and that he met Jack Crockett while he was there. We don't know why. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I was going to say we don't know why he was in jail. He did say that he was in there for like a DUI charge or something along those lines. And you see Jack Crockett and you think to yourself, that name sounds familiar, because I believe his brother was Jim Crockett of Jim Crockett Promotions. And it was there that he met R-Truth, and I guess Jack Crockett did interviews for Jim Crockett Promotions. And he promised R-Truth when he got out of jail that he would get him a job, because he saw his charisma, his athletic ability. He thought he would be a great fit for wrestling, and he absolutely was. So when he got out, he took R-Truth to a WCW show, actually, and that was R-Truth's first wrestling show. And after seeing Ric Flair come out and just get that type of reaction, it clicked for him instantly. So Jack Crockett kind of hooked him up from there with trainers and the Italian Stallion and various other people. So he and Crockett kind of went in different directions after that, and R-Truth pursued the professional wrestling thing. And he called Crockett a saving grace. And this was my favorite part of the documentary, I think, where they show Jack being interviewed by probably at Freedom Park around there, wherever in Charlotte. I think it might be still where he lives. I don't know. And then R-Truth sneaks up behind him. He doesn't know that. I don't think he knows that he's going to be there or that he's there, period, because he sneaks up behind him, and they have this very emotional reunion. And Jack Crockett says that he's very proud of everything he's accomplished, and R-Truth just breaks down in tears. And I was crying just watching this. This is so emotional that Crockett had such an impact on his life, and he takes zero credit for it whatsoever. He just said that he opened the door for Truth, and he just took it from there. I thought this was amazing. But anyway, we see R-Truth talking about how he was making just $20 a week. But so he wasn't really making much money. But this whole wrestling thing was fueling his spirit with something positive, he said. And it was around this time that he had 2 kids. And then he traveled over to NWA Wildside in 1990. And that was where he met actually AJ Styles a few years later. And as soon as AJ met him, he knew that he had it. And he was incorporating a lot of the stuff that he was doing in music into his wrestling arsenal, including like the James Brown split. That's where he got it from, was from James Brown, which is amazing. I probably knew that and I just forgot, but now that I hear it on the documentary, I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense, and it's actually pretty cool that's where he got it from. So it was around that time that people saw him and they were like, wow, you should really make a go for WWE. And then literally maybe 2 weeks later, he got a call from Terry Taylor at WWE, who offered him a contract, signed a developmental deal, but it wasn't all peaches and roses from there, because he got signed to Memphis Championship Wrestling, where he had to relocate to. And while he was there, he felt very discouraged. He was very homesick. He had his wife and his kids. He had to drive 10 hours. He had to drive 10 hours home from Memphis to Charlotte every single week. Not that he had to, but he wanted to because he was so homesick. And he was contemplating giving it up until Road Dogg heard him rapping on one show, and he instantly fell in love with him. he thought, this guy is great. I want him as my tag team partner. So they produced the Get Rowdy song in November of 2000, and it's a pretty awesome song, actually. I don't know if they ever released it around that point, but it has since been released on one of those like Uncaged albums that Jim Johnson had a lot to do with many years ago, and they just released it, I think, about a year ago. Like all the unreleased songs from WWE's history that never made it to an album or whatever, and that one did, and I heard it on YouTube after watching this, and it's a pretty damn good song. But it didn't last long. Road Dogg got fired probably soon after, and R-Truth got fired maybe a year later. He called it a big blow. He felt like he failed not only himself, but his mom, his parents, just in general, his kids, his fans, everybody. But before we go any further with that, he actually shows off his home studio, and that's where he records all of his music. It looks like a pretty damn cool place, like where he records his music. He has quotes on the wall, pictures, like pay-per-view posters that he was on. Really, really cool stuff. So anyway, he got a call right after leaving WWE, getting fired from WWE, probably in 2002 when the company started, from Jerry Jarrett about joining an upstart promotion. And Jeff Jarrett instantly knew that they could do something special with R-Truth because the guy was talented. He was shocked that the guy didn't already have a job, that more people were not knocking down his door to come work for them because he was so fucking good. And that was where he became Ron the Truth Killings. So, because he cut a shoot promo upon making his TNA debut. And he still had a lot of bad blood, a lot of hostility from leaving WWE about being fired. And he said, oh, they wouldn't let me be me and blah, blah, blah. Your typical, like, TNA was known for that for a very long time, where people would be released from WWE or like get fired or leave or whatever. And then like every person who did that for the next decade would go to TNA. Decade and a half, maybe even, because I know Drew McIntyre did that too in like 2015, and everyone had done it. They were like, oh, fuck WWE, blah, 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 and it got old after a while, but it was cool when R-Truth did it, and that's how we went from being K-Crush to Ron the Truth Killings, because his name is Ron Killings, but the truth came from the shoot promos that he was cutting around that point, because he was just saying what would be true, So at an NWA TNA pay-per-view, because I guess NWA was, not I guess, they were in a partnership with TNA at that time to kind of help them get them off the ground. He beat Ken Shamrock to become the first black NWA World Heavyweight Champion ever, which is crazy. I knew he was NWA Champion, but it didn't really dawn on me until I heard that, like, wow, they never had a black champion before that? Like, the title's been around forever, and they never had a black champion prior to that point? That blew my mind. But he was a pillar of TNA for the first 5 years they were around. I don't really have many memories of R-Truth in TNA. I've seen some pay-per-views and stuff like that I've actually reviewed here on the channel. But I don't really associate R-Truth with TNA because I'm just, mostly because I wasn't watching at that point. I didn't start watching until right after he left. But it came to a point where he felt like he outgrew TNA, and leaving there was one of the hardest decisions he ever had to make. So before we go any further, I thought it was awesome they included the TNA footage. I know they've been doing this for a lot of the 24s and just documentaries and network specials and whatnot. It'll never not be cool to me to hear them talk about TNA, show TNA footage via the Impact Plus app, which they did promote at the end of the documentary afterward, along with his rap album, his latest singles and stuff like that on Spotify. I think that's awesome, as opposed to completely brushing over it and talking about, oh, it was released and then he came back. Like, no, they're acknowledging it now, a lot like they did with like the Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy 24 a couple years ago, which was, I think, probably my favorite they've ever done. I'm so happy they acknowledged that stuff, because that was a big part of his career and really where he became the R-Truth that we know and love today. Because without that period in his career, he probably would not be back in WWE right now. Anyway, so it was after he left TNA that I don't know if he was friends with Umaga, but he was talking to Umaga, R.I.P., and Umaga told him, hey, I've heard your name being talked about a little bit. I would, go call WWE. They might be interested. And soon after, he was brought back to WWE at the beginning of 2008. And he knew when he started doing the vignettes for his return that Vince was no longer mad at him, because he was kind of unsure as to whether to come back, not because he didn't want to, but because he was cutting all these shoot promos, upon arriving in TNA about, fuck WWE and all this other bullshit. And he didn't know if they wanted him back, and they definitely did. And he felt like he matured while he was away from WWE, and probably getting released was, again, one of the best things to ever happen to him. And so then he debuted on SmackDown. I remember this because I was watching SmackDown at this point with the whole What's Up gimmick in August of 2008. And he said that he feels like he's living his dream every single time he's out there singing a song. And they kind of skip, not even kind of, they do. They skip over the next 3 years of his career. And, sorry, I got to get closer to the mic here. They don't talk about, really, he didn't do much from 2009 to 2010. He was teaming with John Morrison. He didn't really do anything. But I'm glad they brought up the little Jimmy stuff in 2011, because that was a big part of his career, and like you said here, the catalyst for him becoming the crazy character that we know and love today. This has been going on for 9 years now, ever since he first went heel in April of 2011, which I still remember as being one of the coolest moments as a fan at that point, because I wasn't expecting it. It was such a, nice, refreshing change of pace for R-Truth, because he wasn't funny back before he turned heel. He was good, but he was just getting the crowd behind him via the what's up shit. No one really cared. It had a short shelf life, and he wasn't doing much. He wasn't winning many titles. It was time for something new. They turned him heel, and it took off. So I guess he said that he was supposed to call John Cena Little Jimmy. Why, he doesn't know. No one knows. I don't know why they would want him to call Cena Little Jimmy, but he went with what was in his head. So he called an imaginary person Little Jimmys, the little kids in the crowd Little Jimmys. And it took off. R-Truth was a master of evolving. We see all the skits that he did with a Little Jimmy imaginary character from 2011 to 2013. He had the Little Jimmy shirt made. I remember seeing people at school, in high school, wearing that thing. That's how popular the whole Little Jimmy thing was with R-Truth at that point. It got him over, not only as a heel, but as a babyface soon after. And I like the heel stuff. I was kind of pissed they went back to him being a babyface. But him as a heel was amazing. It was probably the biggest career resurgence he ever experienced, even including nowadays with the 24/7 championship, because without that heel run, again, he might not be here today. He probably would have gone the way of Shelton Benjamin and all the other mid-carders that weren't doing much around that time. But, so he made people care about Air, The Miz said, who was teaming with him around that point. And he can make people love him, but he could also make people hate him within an instant. He could flip that switch, as quickly as he wanted to. That's the great part about R-Truth. And that was really what started his character, like he said here, about, not being all there. His character started to lose his mind, and that's the catalyst for the character that we have now today with R-Truth. So he faced John Cena in the main event of the 2011 Capital Punishment pay-per-view. If you remember that, the show sucked. It was a terrible show. There were a lot of like, oh my God, this is a bad concept type pay-per-views in 2011. There will be some people that will say, oh, it wasn't that bad. Well, they didn't bring it back. It had some good matches on the show. And I know R-Truth and Cena was like one of the hotter feuds at that point. The match was nothing special, but it was cool to see him in the main event, I will say that. It was pretty cool to see him in the main event of a WWE pay-per-view. He faced John Cena at that point for the WWE Championship, said that Cena was a really hot character. So to be in the main event with him, of all people, was iconic, he said. He said that, not him, but Kofi Kingston or The Miz, I think, had said that everyone knew it was well-deserved. Now, granted, he didn't win the WWE Championship, and he probably should have, but if he did, then we would not have gotten the Cena CM Punk match at the July Chicago Money in the Bank pay-per-view. So maybe it worked out for the best after all. But everyone knew that push that he was getting around that point was very well-deserved because he was killing it, and he had long deserved that momentum, that type of push in WWE, almost 10 years removed, well after 10 years actually, debuting in WWE the first time. And that wasn't it. The rest of 2011 was pretty kind to R-Truth. He and The Miz competed in the main event of the 2011 Survivor Series pay-per-view at Madison Square Garden, together as Awesome Truth, and they were on a hot streak at that point, against John Cena and The Rock at Madison Square Garden, like I said. And it was an amazing moment. He loved working with The Rock. It was meant a lot to both of them. They said to each other before the match, holy shit, like, this is actually happening. Like, that's crazy. And The Miz was in the main event of WrestleMania. This was probably bigger for him because he was actually wrestling The Rock now. And it was in Madison Square Garden. The main event sucked, and this was a much better match. It was all right. It wasn't a classic by any means. But it was cool, and R-Truth had a lot of momentum, as did The Miz, his Awesome Truth. And, unfortunately, they didn't talk about it here, but R-Truth actually got suspended. And they wrote him out of storylines the next night on Raw, and they had to cut the whole thing short, and they had Truth and Miz feud when he got back. So the thing never really took off, unfortunately, past a certain point, but it was fun while it lasted. So we see shots of him at home with his family. Says that he loves laughing with his family at home. Who you see on TV with R-Truth is who he is at home. Carmella actually calls him the funniest person that she's ever met, and we see just a mirage of clips of, him coming out and doing the crazy stuff like bringing the ladder in the Royal Rumble in 2016, which was actually AJ's debut, and he talked about it from his point of view. And it was just so funny now. I mean, it was funny then, but it's even funnier now knowing what his character's like. And when he brought the ladder out, thinking it was a Money in the Bank ladder match in the Royal Rumble, and it meant a lot to AJ because he knew R-Truth very well, and that was his debut match, And he said that that was actually Truth's idea. And Vince did not originally have him on the card for the pay-per-view, but he brought the idea up to Vince, and he was like, ha ha ha, Truth. That would be funny. And then he put him in the match. So who knows whose spot he took in the Rumble that year, but it paid off because the spot was funny. R-Truth can get away with anything, Kofi Kingston says, or someone else, about how, he does all these funny things. He's on TikTok, 24/7 Championship. He was teasing being a part of a WWE Championship tournament when Rollins vacated the belt in late 2015. He was like, I'm going to become the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. And then someone had said, maybe Roman had said, or Dean Ambrose, dude, you're not even in the tournament. And then he's like, oh, my bad. Or like when he thought he was a part of the Money in the Bank ladder match that same year in 2015. I think that was what kind of started the skits when he came out, and everyone was like, one after another was like, oh, it's my time to win the Money in the Bank ladder match. And he came out, and then Kane was like, Truth, stop. You're not even in the match. And he's like, you're right, Kane, my bad. It was funny then, and it's so funny now still. I thought that was great. We see shots of him. I've never seen this footage before of him in promo class. He would be leading promo class, having people in tears because he was that funny. So we see skits of him doing the whole 24/7 Championship. AJ Styles calls it a marriage made in heaven. Road Dogg says that it's been some of the best entertainment that he's seen in the past 5 years on WWE TV. And he's currently as hot as he's ever been, according to Jeff Jarrett. Now is the time that he's received the most TV time he's ever had in his entire career, according to R-Truth himself, and he's not wrong. And no one can pull that off quite like him. And so again, that's after they show all the clips and everything from the 24/7 Championship and all the other wacky stuff he's done in the last 6-7 years, which has all been very entertaining. Then he gets serious to close it out here as he visits his childhood home, and he doesn't really remember it being as small as it is. But he said that his family made the most out of everything that they had at that point, which was not much at all, but they made the most of it, stayed positive, and he said that all we got was faith and belief, and that's powerful. And we actually see him at the house, and he introduces himself to the guy who lives there now with his kid, and they're big fans, and they take pictures with the championship. Just a really cute moment. And so we hear from a few other superstars who praise R-Truth. We hear from AJ Styles, Kofi Kingston, The Miz, Carmella, so many other people, Mickey James, a lot of people who've had a lot of interaction with him. We see The Rock interacting with him, Vince, John Cena, so many other people, the Usos. And, people just love being around him. It's why Vince brings him on all the tours, all the handshake tours, like across, the Middle East and stuff like that, because he's so damn likable. And he's always upbeat. He's always positive. Miz said he's never had a bad day in WWE. R-Truth has. Not a single one. He's just always R-Truth. He's always the same. He's just always awesome. And he still looks the same, too. They even joke about that here, too, which is hilarious. They joke about how he looks the same now as he did in the NWA Wildside days. I think AJ brought that up. And they also show the clip of him making Brock Lesnar crack up last month on Raw. I was very happy they included that because that was an awesome moment. I think Brock loves him so much, he wants to do more with R-Truth. How hilarious is that? That he loved working with R-Truth so much, he wants to work more with him. Fuck, dude, just put him in the Super Showdown main event, Like, if they were going to have Ricochet go in there and get squashed, why not just do R-Truth? Like, I'm not even joking. Like, why not just have R-Truth go in there and get squashed or do something funny or whatever? It would have been a much better use of time than having Ricochet take 10 suplexes and have that be it. It just made to be look like a complete loser. R-Truth is incredible anyway, so why not? In terms of, like, in-ring ability and stuff like that, and in terms of accomplishments and whatever. So why the fuck not, I think that would have been funny. But nonetheless, he said that sports entertainment saved his life, and that life has been very good to him. I thought this was awesome. Again, this was very enjoyable. Made me cry, laugh, everything else in between, smile. And, just a lot of stuff I didn't know about R-Truth leaving WWE. He never mentioned why he left or why he got fired from WWE, same thing with Road Dogg. I assume I don't know if it was drug-related. I have no idea. But he got fired, probably because, bad behavior, whatever. And then he came back and has had a career resurgence over the past decade and a half in WWE, doing various characters, winning titles, entertaining the masses, and now he's one of the best parts of WWE TV, even in 2020. And no one's complaining because he's just laugh-out-loud hilarious. He's just laugh-out-loud hilarious. That segment he did on Raw a month ago with Brock Lesnar was one of my favorite segments on the show all year. That's how good it was. But definitely invest the 50 minutes to watching this. This was great stuff. The WWE 24 on R-Truth. So, again, these 24s are never anything less than spectacular. This was no exception. And it's such a shame that it got overshadowed by Super Showdown on Thursday, because this really was good, and it deserves more credit. A lot like the Big Show thing, the Broken Skull Sessions from last week and didn't see a lot of people talking about it, but that was also very good. And I reviewed that here on the channel last Sunday, I think. Yeah, because Monday I talked about the Ruthless Aggression show, which is going up tomorrow, by the way, right here on the channel. Episode 4 of Season 1 of the Ruthless Aggression show. I forgot who it's on, but I'm very much looking forward to the show because so far it's been awesome. That Evolution episode a week ago was the best one they've done yet. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow's. I think it's on Brock, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, yeah, so check this out on the WWE Network, and thank you guys, as always, for checking out the videos. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the videos, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Like I said, tomorrow, right here, Network and Chill, come on back with a review of Episode 4 of Season 1 of Ruthless Aggression, so check that out. And then Tuesday, my review, as well as Alexis's 2 cents, on the WWE Ice Cream Sandwiches. It was supposed to go up last Tuesday, had some issues with the uploading and my phone and whatever, but we got it all figured out. It's uploaded right now. It will be published on Tuesday, so stay tuned for that as well. That being said, guys, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I don't think there's anything coming up today wrestling-wise. I know Revolution was last night as this goes up on Sunday, so enjoy the rest of your Sunday, Monday, whatever it might be. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.